Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that tries to cut through the noise,
Right.
gets you straight to the important stuff. And today, we are plunging into a topic that's, well, it's quietly reshaping everything. Artificial intelligence.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Completely. Changing how we work, how we live.
Yeah.
But what's really powering this whole revolution?
Yeah, that's the crucial question. It's something called AI compute.
Right. AI compute. So think of it like the specialized muscles, the brains, really, needed to train and actually run these incredibly powerful AI models.
Exactly, the computational heavy lifting.
And here's the kicker, right?
Yeah.
The demand for this AI compute is just, it's skyrocketing.
Oh, absolutely. Some estimates are saying we might need, what, 100 times more computation than we thought just last year?
100 times.
Yeah.
It's almost unimaginable. And this intense demand, well, it's kicked off a global competition. AI compute isn't just a resource anymore.
No, it's become a strategic asset. Hugely strategic.
Which brings us right to our core concept for today. Compute sovereignty. What does that actually mean, for a country to have control over its AI compute? How do you define it?
And who really has it? That's maybe the most surprising part.
Exactly. So our mission today is basically to give you a shortcut to understanding this. It's critical, but often overlooked, this whole aspect of geopolitical power, tech independence, national security even, in the age of AI.
And we're drawing on this really fascinating new study. It's from the Oxford Internet Institute.
Right. And they empirically look at these questions, specifically through the lens of the big public cloud providers.
Yeah, they break down compute sovereignty into 3 different levels. It really helps clarify things.
And we're going to explore those levels, reveal some pretty surprising global gaps. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll have the essential nuggets, the memorable examples, and a really clear picture of what's truly at stake.
Definitely. And it's worth remembering this idea of compute sovereignty. It didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right. It comes from somewhere.
Yeah, it evolves from this broader concept, digital sovereignty. That's an idea that's been knocking around since, well, the early internet days in the 90s.
Okay.
And it gained a lot more attention, especially in Europe after the Snowden revelations, and more recently with U.S.-China tensions heating up, big tech's influence.
So historically, digital sovereignty was more about regulating tech generally within borders.
Pretty much, yeah. A government's ability to control the digital space and its territory, but AI shifted the focus, narrowed it right down to the computational power itself, the compute.
Okay, let's unpack that then. Why now? Why has this specific compute part suddenly become such a critical strategic thing for governments? What's really driving this intense focus?
Well, it's tied directly into the global race for AI leadership, for one.
Okay.
And also this urgent need for supply chain resilience, making sure you actually have access to this stuff. And of course, strategic autonomy, not being totally dependent on others.
Right. And you mentioned that NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang say.
Yeah, that quote about needing easily 100 times more computation than we thought just last year, that really puts it starkly.
It really does.
It's not just about having faster computers anymore, it's about national capability. Some scholars are even calling this rush for sovereign AI the 21st century's arms race.
Wow. An arms race. That highlights how vital this is seen now.
Exactly. And that's where this Oxford study comes in. It gives us a framework.
The 3 levels you mentioned.
Right. 3 levels to conceptualize compute sovereignty. Each gives you a different angle on control, on autonomy over these AI resources.
And how did they get their data? What was the methodology?
They did basically a census. They looked at 9 top public cloud providers.
The big ones.
Yeah, the big ones. AWS, Google, Microsoft from the US, Alibaba, Huawei, Tencent from China, and then Exascale, Hetzner, and OVH Cloud from Europe.
Okay, so that covers a huge chunk of the market.
About 70%, yeah. And crucially, they focused on public AI compute, the stuff that's commercially available through these cloud platforms, not like government supercomputers.
Got it. Okay, let's dive into level 1 then. Territorial sovereignty. They also call it in-country compute. This sounds like the broadest one. What does it actually mean for a country? And, what are the upsides governments see in having these massive AI data centers physically on their soil?
So yeah, level 1 is all about physical location. It simply means having those AI data centers, the big clusters of servers, the infrastructure, often called cloud regions, physically inside your country's borders.
Okay, straightforward enough.
It aligns with that classic idea of the sovereign state, right? The Westphalian model. Your authority is tied to your territory.
Makes sense. And the benefits.
Well, the perceived benefits are pretty significant. Governments get more direct regulatory control. They can enforce laws like know your customer checks or run audits right where the AI models and data are being processed.
Right, physically there.
Yeah. And you see big companies, Microsoft, AWS, offering so-called sovereign digital services
Yeah.
precisely by putting their infrastructure in the host country.
Ah, interesting. So it's a selling point.
Definitely. Plus, it enhances supply security for these critical resources. And there are economic arguments, too. Potential tax revenue, construction jobs, that kind of thing.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty clear win on the surface.
Mm.
But connecting this to the bigger picture, there must be trade-offs, right? Costs involved.
Oh, absolutely. Big trade-offs. While the benefits seem clear, you have to look at the costs. These data centers are incredibly resource-hungry.
Energy, water.
Huge amounts of energy, water, and land. We're already seeing this put upward pressure on electricity prices in some places. Or, massive water use in areas that are already facing drought.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem.
And economically, it's maybe not as great as it sounds. Data centers are very capital intensive, but don't actually employ that many people long term compared to the investment.
Okay.
And governments often give big tax breaks to attract them, which can eat up a lot of that potential revenue.
Right.
Plus, there are social and political costs. You get local communities, civil society groups pushing back against these developments because of the environmental impact or the strain on resources. We've seen that in places like North Holland, for example.
So it's definitely not a simple calculation.
Yeah.
What does the global picture look like then for this in-country compute? What did the study find?
Yeah, the findings here are quite stark, actually. They found 225 cloud regions globally, but only 132 are accelerator-enabled.
Meaning they have the special chips for AI?
Exactly. The powerful GPUs or other accelerators needed for serious AI workloads. And those 132 regions, they're located in just 33 countries worldwide.
Only 33.
Wow. And it gets even narrower. Only 24 countries host what they call training-relevant AI compute. That's the really high-end stuff needed for training cutting-edge frontier models.
So this really highlights a massive gap.
A huge compute haves and have-nots disparity, yeah. Most countries in the world have basically none of this public cloud AI compute capacity within their borders.
Any examples?
Well, look at South America or Africa. Brazil and South Africa are the only countries in their entire regions with any public cloud AI compute found in the census. It's incredibly concentrated.
That is striking. So for countries that maybe can't host these massive centers themselves, are there other ways to get access or achieve some kind of sovereignty at this level?
Yes, absolutely. Because it is so hard for many countries to host domestically, we're seeing alternatives pop up, particularly regional approaches.
Like countries pooling resources.
Exactly. Things like the European High Performance Computing Joint undertaking EuroHPC, they have the LUMI supercomputer cluster in Finland.
Ah, okay.
Allows countries to share the costs, share the governance, get access to top-tier computing without each having to build and manage it all themselves. It's a kind of collective approach.
That makes sense, a pragmatic solution. Okay, let's move to level 2 then, provider sovereignty. This goes a bit deeper, you said. It focuses on the nationality of the company, the cloud provider, operating the data centers, even if they're in your country.
Right.
So what's the concern here? If the servers are physically in your country, why does it matter if it's, say, a U.S. or Chinese company running them?
Well, it introduces a whole different layer of concern. It's about this tension, this push and pull between wanting the freedom to develop your own domestic tech capability
Okay, self-sufficiency.
versus the freedom from potential foreign government control or, surveillance.
Right, the spying concern.
Exactly. And this ties into the theory of weaponized interdependence.
Weaponized interdependence. Explain that.
It's the idea that relying heavily on another country's digital infrastructure, like cloud services, can be turned into a weapon, essentially, a point of leverage.
How so?
Think about a foreign government potentially forcing one of its companies, even if operating abroad, to hand over data. This is a real worry with laws like the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, or the Cloud Act.
Right. Those allow the U.S. government to compel U.S. companies to provide data under certain conditions, even if it's stored overseas.
Precisely. So because of concerns like that, some governments are creating what they call trusted vendor frameworks.
Trying to manage the risk.
Yeah, trying to mitigate risks from foreign-owned digital infrastructure. Like The EU is looking at rules that might preclude majority foreign-owned companies from getting the highest level of cloud security certification. It's based on a French model called Secnum Cloud.
Okay, so trying to ensure providers meet certain national security standards. What's the reality on the ground then? How many countries actually have their own big cloud providers versus relying on foreign ones?
Well, that's what's fascinating. Very few countries actually have truly domestic cloud hyperscalers that can compete globally.
It's dominated by the US and China mostly.
Overwhelmingly. The global market is really concentrated around a handful of US and Chinese giants.
So what does that mean for other countries? What are their strategies?
It leaves most countries facing a strategic choice. They can either align or they can hedge.
Align or hedge. Okay.
So aligning means they primarily rely on providers from just one foreign country. The study found 18 countries doing this.
Examples.
Think Australia, Japan, Israel. They tend to align with U.S. providers. Then you have Chile, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, often aligning more with Chinese providers. These choices usually mirror broader geopolitical alliances, right?
Makes sense. And hedging.
Hedging is where countries host providers from multiple foreign nationalities. 12 countries in the census did this. Singapore is a great example. They host both major U.S. and Chinese cloud regions.
Trying to keep their options open. Avoid over-reliance.
Exactly. Aiming for a bit more strategic autonomy through diversification. Playing the field, so to speak.
Any outliers?
Austria was unique in the study. It was the only country that relied solely on European providers. No U.S. or Chinese AI compute present.
Interesting. Okay, that brings us down to the deepest layer. Level 3, accelerator sovereignty.
The foundational level.
This is about the actual chips, right? The AI accelerators, the brains, as we called them earlier, whose companies design and make these critical components.
Exactly. And this is where things get maybe the most concentrated, the biggest bottleneck.
Why is that?
Because the market for these absolutely critical AI chips is incredibly dominated by just one player.
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, the U.S. company, they have something like 80 to 95% market share for these high-end AI accelerators. It's staggering.
Wow, 80 to 95%. That's huge.
It is, and the supply chain underneath that is also incredibly complex and globalized. You've got Taiwan's TSMC doing maybe 90% of the actual chip fabrication.
Right, the manufacturing.
And the Netherlands ASML providing the absolutely essential lithography equipment needed to make the most advanced chips. Nobody else can really do what they do at scale.
So it's not just one company, it's this whole intricate global chain, but with key choke points.
Precisely. Key choke points controlled by very few players in very few countries.
Okay, so connecting this to the bigger picture, control over this chip supply chain must be a massive geoeconomic tool now.
Oh, absolutely. It's become major leverage.
How is that playing out? What does it mean for countries trying to build their own AI?
Well, we've seen it directly with things like the U.S. Cheat Chips Act from 2022.
Right, the export controls.
Yeah, preventing NVIDIA from selling its most advanced AI accelerators to China. The explicit goal there was to limit China's ability to build up its AI compute power using the best available chips.
And China's response?
Predictably, it spurred massive investment from Chinese tech firms, Huawei, Alibaba, Tencent, into developing their own in-house AI accelerator designs and trying to build up their domestic fabrication capabilities. Chips like Huawei's Ascend processor are a direct result of this push.
A strategic necessity for them, trying to break that dependency.
Absolutely. It's a direct response to being cut off, essentially.
So what's the global reality at this accelerator level? Who's using whose chips?
The study's findings here are, again, pretty stark. A staggering 95.5% of all the accelerator-enabled public cloud regions they looked at
95.5%.
are powered by accelerators designed by U.S. companies, primarily NVIDIA, of course.
So almost everyone is running on American-designed hardware.
Pretty much. Only the U.S. and China currently host public cloud AI compute that uses accelerators sourced from domestic chip vendors, meaning U.S. chips in the U.S., and Chinese chips, like the Ascend in China.
And outside of China, are those Chinese chips available anywhere else?
Only in a few places, according to the study. France, Singapore, and the UAE were the only other countries offering Huawei Ascend accelerators in their public cloud regions.
So for almost every other country, they are effectively aligned with U.S. vendor NVIDIA at this foundational chip level, whether they chose to be or not.
That's the reality, yeah. It just highlights the immense market dominance and the dependency most nations have on this very narrow U.S.-centric supply chain for the core technology.
And NVIDIA itself is playing into this, right, with their AI Nations initiative.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategic move. They're positioning themselves not just as a supplier, but as a partner, helping countries build their own sovereign AI capabilities, using NVIDIA technology, of course.
Of course. But you mentioned earlier building your own chip industry from scratch.
It's incredibly difficult. Some would say hardly realistic for most countries. Achieving true self-sufficiency or autarky in cutting-edge chip production takes decades, tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars, and immense expertise.
So what's the alternative?
For many, the more viable path is probably friendshoring.
Friendshoring, meaning?
Choosing suppliers, choosing vendors from countries you consider allies or strategic partners. It's not full independence, but it's seen as a way to secure your supply of these critical components from sources you trust more.
Okay, so summing this all up then, the big takeaway seems to be that compute sovereignty isn't simple. It's not yes or no.
Not at all. It's not binary. You can't just say this country has compute sovereignty.
Right. It's always a question of at what level you're looking, territorial, provider, or accelerator, and to what degree they have control at that level.
Exactly. A country might look pretty sovereign on level 1, hosting its own data centers, but still be completely dependent on foreign companies at level 2 to run them, and even more dependent on foreign ships at level 3 to power them.
That multi-layered dependency, that seems key.
That's the crucial insight, I think. Understanding those layers of dependency is the real game changer.
And this study really paints a picture of stark asymmetries, doesn't it?
It really does. Most countries are still fundamentally compute have-nots. They are heavily reliant on a very small number of foreign actors, mostly US and Chinese, for their AI compute infrastructure.
So while some nations are making moves towards more independence,
many, many others are still deeply embedded in this global system where control is really concentrated in just a few hands. And it's crucial to remember, as you said, while this deep dive explains and measures compute sovereignty, the study itself is careful not to advocate for its pursuit.
right, they're not saying everyone should chase this.
No, they're very clear. There are benefits, but also significant drawbacks and costs at each level. The right policy involves complex trade-offs, and those trade-offs look different for every country depending on their specific situation and priorities.
It's about understanding the landscape, the options, the implications.
Okay.
Not necessarily picking a side or saying one path is universally right.
Precisely.
But what this deep dive does do, hopefully, is equip you, our listener, with a much more nuanced understanding.
Yeah.
You get a grasp of this really critical trend, geopolitical, technological, that's shaping the future of AI, shaping national capabilities, shaping global power dynamics.
Hopefully, yeah. Seeing beyond the headlines.
Exactly. Understanding what's really driving this new digital competition.
So that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As AI keeps evolving at this incredible pace, and the global geopolitical landscape stays, well, dynamic,
Yeah.
how might this continued push for compute sovereignty by different nations reshape things?
Yeah, how will it change not just the tech industry or supply chains, but international alliances, dependencies?
And maybe what specific national circumstances could truly justify going all in on pursuing this? And what are the hidden costs, maybe, of this race for control that we haven't even fully grasped yet?
Definitely something to mull over.